Hello, I'm here with Stephen and Elizabeth from Even Pulse, and they're going to tell us about the work that they're doing with the military around the country.
I'm Stephen Robinson. I'm the CEO of Even Pulse. I've had a lifelong interest in national security studies, human performance, what makes people tick under pressure.
And I'm Elizabeth Robinson, and I've actually had a lifelong interest in recovery for the human spirit, recovery for our souls as we go through life, as we go through everyday traumas, and how we navigate the stress response. Our main purpose in our work is to help the human being discover what is innately inside of them, what is already there that they can learn to access and turn on in the form of skill sets, awareness, etc., to help brain body connection, brain body nervous system connection as we're navigating our mental, emotional, physical, spiritual terrain in life every day.
All right, so I know that the two of you have been working with the military a great deal, but can you explain to us what military groups have you worked with and what other groups or organizations do you work with as well?
Even Pulse has trained over 40,000 people so far since we've been in business. About 30,000 of those have been in the US military. So we've trained pretty extensively in the Army and the Air Force, in special operations and various other units. We've also worked in fire rescue and law enforcement, done some corporate work, as well as training some sports teams.
And we knew early on that with a military audience, whatever we were going to teach them had to be actionable. It had to be something that they could do physically, mentally, etc., because they are by nature doers. They take action. We asked ourselves the question, what can I do at 2 a.m. if I don't have a doctor, a therapist, or a prescription? And that question actually birthed the BASAR method. BASAR stands for breathing, attention, simulation, energy, and recovery. We teach this as a way of really helping people to see that BASAR is already built inside of them. It is really looking at how do we use skills as a way to navigate our response to stress.
Okay, so given that, how or why did you choose to incorporate TRE into your work?
Well, first and foremost, David, we knew that the physicality of the exercise would resonate with soldiers. A lot of it we found for acceptability is putting it into a context where they understand something about the brain nervous system body connection and why it's relevant to them. So, of course, a lot of them have lower back pain and have issues with their body, but by helping them understand that the body becomes the somatic repository for their tension and their nervous system overload, that became a very natural sort of inflection point where they could understand this is why we're doing these exercises. Typically, we usually use them at the end of training. So if we do a half-day training session, we'll do about the last 45 minutes is dedicated to the exercises. So we basically sort of frame out the end of the day with a nice relaxation response. And we teach it a lot around the ideas that tension and nervous system overload basically become held through the core musculature. And that's why we call the exercises core. When we first started training with the exercises, we called them core for combat operational recovery exercise. We thought that was a way of framing it for the soldiers, in this case, Army soldiers we were working with. They find it acceptable. It would seem to make sense.
And throughout the entire day, we are setting up going into TRE with our participants, letting them know at the end today, we are going to do something that's going to demonstrate your parasympathetic nervous system, or it's going to demonstrate the vagus nerve coming online. So all the things that we're teaching throughout the day can reflect to the TREs and set up this kind of excitement about this thing that's to come at the end of the day.
By talking about core, making the exercises very PT focused, so physical training in the military context, and even the way we lead into the exercises made it seem like another PT routine to them. And so it was an easeful way for the soldiers to relate to it, but also for us to frame it in a way they could connect to.
You've been doing this work for a number of years now. Have you ever had the opportunity to have any scientific study or research done on the results of your work?
So the Army conducted a major study through two independent research organizations on the BASE-R method and our work with the soldiers at this particular military installation. And they did the study over well over 2 years. And the researchers were quite astounded by the results because they found that about 70% of the soldiers used the skills that they learned in the training regularly during the course of their deployment. Another piece of feedback that they got that was very strong was that they felt differently. They had fewer issues with post-traumatic stress, fewer issues with anxiety and depression, better communication, soldier to soldier and soldier to family member, higher scores for resilience on the Connor-Davidson Resilience Assessment. And they also gave very strong positive feedback on the core exercises. A lot of them found them very practical. The number reported that they used them during their deployment in Afghanistan. And a high percentage who used the exercises regularly also said they had fewer issues with their lower back.
So when we are able to normalize the tremor response and the shaking response, people kind of go, oh, so this is natural. This is normal that I would have this response. And as we cultivate that throughout the training and in the session as people are tremoring, they find it's almost like it's permission to discharge. And that in and of itself, I think, for people who face the kind of things that military personnel do, is it's invaluable.
So what have been the responses of the people that you've worked with, particularly in regards to TRE? We would have a curiosity about that.
I would say it's really wide ranging. We've seen everything from people come off the floor literally glowing, ecstatic, blissful. I mean, really elevated emotion and feelings of peace. I would say some people can be all the way to the other end of the spectrum, a little bit freaked out. They're not sure what just happened to them. They're not trusting their own bodies or their own process. I think if there's high levels of background in shame or anything like that, they can feel like they're not in control. So they're trying to modulate the experience. We give permission to modulate. Don't go all the way. Take this one little step at a time. Go as far as you're comfortable going. I think sometimes people come off the ground and have questions. They're just like, what just happened? What was that? They still go in believing that when they see it demonstrated beforehand that somebody was faking it, and then they feel it in their own bodies and they can't believe that their body did that.
And anecdotally, primarily, we have about an 80% success rate with those who've identified as having current lower back issues, as having some level of relief or a greater sense of relaxation, various other responses. But among all the skills, and they learn about 14 skills in a half-day training block with us, participants often reference core as one of their most enjoyed exercises and focal points of the training.
Anyway, this gentleman got up from the floor and he looked stunned. He actually had a look of like almost like deer in the headlights. So I went over to him and I said, "How are you doing?" And he said, "For 20 years, due to all these injuries and surgeries, I have not been able to stand on both my feet. I can only stand on one side of my body at a time, and I have to keep shifting back from left to right." And he said, "I am standing on both of my feet for the first time in nearly 20 years.
And he gave that testimonial in front of over 100 other chiefs or chiefs in the making.
Okay. I have people asking me all the time, how do you work with military or fire departments or first responders and that sort of thing? Can you explain to us how you managed to get in the military and how does all this work?
So our initial foray to doing training on scale in the military came after some work we were doing at a particular military installation where a two-star general asked us to come in and work with his people. And we ended up going under contract as part of the research project, specifically on BASE-R and the even pulse methodology. We were awarded 2 grants along the way, and those turned into what became the contract vehicle we operate off of right now. We have an IDIQ, which means indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, meaning we can train as much as the government customer requires us to in any given locations. We've trained within the Army, 2 Army Brigade combat teams, which is the combat formation of the Army, the primary formation. We've trained Army Special Forces, Air Force Special Operations, Army National Guard within military police, within aviators. We've trained some Marine and Naval aviators and over 10,000 within the U.S. Air Force among airmen. We typically lead into the exercises with a PT focus, so physical training. One of the reasons for that is that within a group environment in a military setting, the camaraderie, the warrior ethos, there's a lot around how do we train together. And by doing a PT focus, that's a very, very natural way to kind of break down the resistance, but also help people see from a camaraderie standpoint, we're all in this together. We also sometimes too have led in other ways that if we were either time compressed or we sense that the audience could be facilitated in a different way, sometimes we've dispensed with the lead in with more of the PT, like half squats and lunges and things like that, and had them go right to the floor and go into the bridge.
Mm-hmm. Most recently, we took some changes when we were working with husbands and wives. We were working with some special forces groups, and we were asked to come to their reintegration weekends for their families. So the kids were off doing some exercises and having fun on the zip lines and whatnot, and we had mom and dad. So now we're off the military installation, we're out of uniform, we're in a much more relaxed and informal environment, and the spouses are together. So per Dr. Berceli's suggestion, we had the spouses watch the soldiers tremor, and then the soldiers watch the spouses tremor. And not only did that provide a moment of intimacy for them as a couple, to witness each other, to watch one another's bodies move in a way that they may or may not have ever seen before. But this was a moment for them to observe one another and be the witness. And I saw them encourage each other. It became more quiet. And I know this is maybe a little bit of a stretch, but it was more like a prayer. It was more like, I'm listening to you. I'm watching this. And sometimes when we have that opportunity to be seen by our partners, that can really make a difference in terms of how they might move forward with those exercises. I almost don't want to do it any other way after seeing what happened with that. Is how they might say, hey, let's do that together tonight. That was a really tough day, or that was really stressful. Let's lay down on the floor and tremor together, or let's teach the kids how to do it.
And the one thing I'd add to that too is that by doing the exercises, they had a commonality of experience, and in being with each other. And certainly a lot of people would perceive a soldier's experience and the spouse is very bifurcated, very different. They're in completely different worlds. But by them both experiencing this, as people came up off the floor, there were a lot of smiles. I could see lots of eye contact and connection, a lot of it nonverbal, but recognizing in each other, hey, we both just shared something.
Great. What are you presently doing in your company, and what are your hopes of the future moving forward with your company and the techniques that you include in your Even Pulse program?
Well, one thing I can say is that after 20 years of doing this, so we just celebrated our 20-year anniversary of our business, and it is something I love, love, love every time we go out and do it. I don't tire of it. I don't tire of teaching and training the same things over and over and over again, because it is so, so important what we are teaching and training. We also are practitioners of what we teach every single day of our lives, because of course, stress is ubiquitous. It's mounting in our world, and we're having to be practitioners of what we teach every single day. And I think we still have a lot of big dreams for where we would like to go with this. I'd love to see us start to excel outside of the military. The military has been where we were led to go. It's where we were meant to go. It's where the doors opened for us. But there isn't anywhere that a method like BASAR can't go. Um, I think the whole world needs to tremor, and the whole world needs to learn how to breathe and focus their attention and deliberately simulate the future that they want to create. All of those things are as true today as they were 20 years ago. So
And I can say for my part, David, that unabashedly, I want to see our training go entirely across the military. We have a lot of interest and we continue to have great success there. We're doing more work with the National Guard right now, um, continuing to do work in the Air Force and in special operations and some other areas. So we're excited about the potential and the growth of it there. And I think from there, probably crossing over, probably more into corporate and doing some work outside of the military as well. Well, I can say that CORE has made a huge difference in my life. I mean, since we met you in 2005, I don't think our training model would have been the same without it. And so we're very grateful to have been working with you all these years, and it's been quite a journey. Yes, folks can reach out to us through info@evenpulse.com. If you have questions or you're interested in what the company's doing or new directions we might be going in.
and also check us out at evenpulse.com. If people want to, we've got a lot of free content up there. There's exercises, videos. We've done amazing interviews with people on resilience, from Holocaust survivors to 18 Delta special operations, snipers. We've done a lot of amazing footage with people, hearing their perspective on resilience and what they can do to, what they could share to offer people some insights into their own resilience.